Hey everyone! So before we start the HockeyBuzzcast, I'd like to let you guys know that the above footage today is provided by the blimp. Did you see this? This is the one thing that was hilarious to me. They show the Goodyear blimp last night during the broadcast, and they say we'd like to thank the Goodyear blimp for providing the above coverage of the game. You know, which is in an indoor arena. So it's like they're just shooting the top of the building. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the heck is this? Like they're calling it the official above coverage.
Kev, it used to be like when the Bills played a Monday night game, it would always be a thrill when the Goodyear blimp landed at the Buffalo airport, and then you would see it flying above of Rich Stadium or Ralph Olson Stadium or whatever. Now, in the age of drones, you really don't need the Goodyear blimp anymore.
The blimp is a hell of an advertising tool.
I know. I'm just saying that there's got to be a significant cost to flying it, and but I've seen drone shots above different arenas that are fantastic, and I'm like, you really don't need the Goodyear blimp anymore.
No, and the drones are what, $150 or something?
Right, exactly.
It's not. It's obviously about the Goodyear blimp in the sky. It's like a big billboard. That's the whole idea of it, right? So it's a big billboard for Goodyear, but the funny thing, providing above coverage from above, to me that was just like coverage of what, the top of the stadium.
The top of whether or not you have a pigeons.
It looks like a
top here. Your building. Yeah, we still get the blimp at the University of Michigan games. I don't live that far from the University of Michigan Stadium, so on Saturday afternoons I see the blimp, making its way slowly to the stadium all the time. So it's a big deal to have the blimp.
But to your point, Hack, it sort of loses its allure when it's at Amalie Arena and it's not an open air. It's an arena with a roof. Great. You're getting pictures of the roof.
They're calling it coverage.
How do you do that?
They're calling it coverage. I mean, I'm sure it's great to have the blimp. And if you're in Tampa area, it's cool. You see the blimp. That means something special is in town. That's cool. But to show footage from it. That was pretty funny. All right, here we go. Ready? All right, let's do it. I got the date, I think, somewhere. Here it is. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, June 23rd, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and the Goodyear blimp has never flown over my house.
I'm Kevin Allen of Hockey Buzz, and I do see the blimp. I don't know if it's ever been directly over my house, but
pretty close.
It's been in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so. I'm excellent. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is a podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. There are exactly 25 blimps in the world. I just looked that up. I don't know why, but I wondered how many blimps there were in the world. But there are 25 blimps still flying in this world we have right now.
Okay.
Anyway,
I'm gonna make a joke about Roseanne.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a play. It's not the blimp thing. Is obviously has had its setbacks. But anyway, let's move. Let's move forward to last night. Speaking of setbacks, I mean, it was a great game. I thought it was a really, really well played, fun game. And I'm gonna be the first to say that Darcy Kemper totally impressed me. He had his best game of the playoffs, I thought, and I feel like was a big reason in why they won that game on the winning goal, because it was such Colorado had them hemmed in overtime, and when Tampa just throws it down the ice to try to get any kind of stoppage, and Kemper realizing that Tampa's trying to change on the far change, throws it back up and grabs him in a line change. Of course, he also grabbed his own team in a line change, so we're going to talk about that. But because the goal goes in and there's 6 guys clearly on the ice when they score, so that's a problem. But let's talk about the game before we get into the controversy of the game. I thought, man, you started to see, in my opinion, in the third period and the overtime, you started to see the rest that Colorado had gotten. That you started to see Tampa tiring. Kevin, did you get that at all?
Yeah, well, I didn't know whether it was just tired or the fact that Colorado is just starting to exert itself. Yeah. And I think the mystique of the Lightning has completely worn off. It was like they were on a power play.
Yeah.
In overtime. They couldn't get the puck out. They were struggling, and they were just hanging on. I mean, we've seen this earlier in the playoffs, and that used to be what the Lightning used to do to other teams, force them to hang on, but they were just hanging on. and it just seemed like a matter of time, but that they were going to score, and they did. But I thought Vasilevsky was good, as he always is, and kept him in it. But in the end, again, the better team won. There's no doubt.
It's definitely been a war of attrition, but the thing that made it even more so last night was Cernak blocking a shot, getting hurt. That knocked him down to 5 defensemen. Sorelli getting injured, and I'm pretty sure that he played limited minutes after. They showed video of him in the locker room having, I think, Patrick Maroon help him put his jersey on because he couldn't lift his arm. So you're having to play with 5 defensemen, you're having to play shorthanded, you're basically selling out trying to tie the series. And like you said, Colorado, the product of 2 sweeps is that they got lots of rest, even though they've had some significant injuries. It really showed in the overtime. But Vasilevsky, he made the save on Logan O'Connor in overtime, and he made a left pad save. I think it was on it might have been on Bowen Byram, but it was right in the crease. He snaked out his left pad and robbed somebody in overtime about a minute before the overtime winner. And, he did everything to keep them in that game. But in the end, Colorado just has more verve and more energy.
His quickness is astonishing. He's such a quick goalie for being so big. You don't see goalies that are that size, that quick. He has the small goalie quickness in a big goalie form. Like the net should be like 8x6 behind him, not 6x4. It's just,
it's just coincidental. But I was putting together my notebook today, and I always like to try to find interesting facts. And I decided to look up the shootout percentages during the regular season, and the guys that hold the all-time record for save percentage and have all of them, the top 4. Allmark of Boston is number 1 in the 840s, but they're all just over the minimum at 40 saves. And once you get beyond that, but the guy that leads, who has any bulk to the number of saves, is Vasilevsky. I thought, well, of course he does. Right. 78% for 8. On he's faced 80 some shots. So. And there's no one else, like that. All the others that have faced fewer shots, which just speaks to, his quickness, because that really is an athletic type environment when you're trying to stop a shootout.
Yeah. But to the point of the attrition, I mean, I barely noticed Nikita Kucherov last night. I mean, he was, I give him all the credit in the world for being in the lineup, but when you're operating at maybe less than 50%, whatever his injury is, I mean, I give him all the plaudits for being gutsy. But like Braden Point, if you're not 100% or Braden Point, if you're 50% of Braden Point, sometimes that's enough, but sometimes it's not. And against a very fresh Colorado team, they need Kucherov and they need Braden Point at 100%, and you're not going to get that. So, I mean, that really hurts them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I mean, I think the Tampa Bay is more beat up, but I wouldn't want to take anything just away from the just pure talent of Colorado.
Sure.
I mean, everybody is just playing at such a high level. Like Bowen Byron, like nobody's talking about him. He's playing 18 minutes a game. He's got 8 assists. Like they got a bunch of guys like that are just playing. Nikushkin is, been phenomenal in this.
He really has. He really is driving his price.
Yeah, they have like 12 players, maybe 13, who are just playing at an incredibly high level. And whether the Lightning are worn down or even if they were fresh, it would be a tighter game. But boy, Colorado just looks like the better team. They've all come together, and I'm sure rest has helped them, but I wouldn't want to sell them short that it's just merely about attrition. It's part of it, but I think Colorado has just been terrific.
Even in the first period when Tampa outshot them like 17-4 or whatever, the shot attempts were almost even. It was crazy. Yeah. Tampa was doing such a great job at blocking shots. And also I think there's something to Colorado aiming a little bit on Vasilevsky that makes them miss the net sometimes, or Tampa's throwing everything at the net. Tampa was just throwing everything towards it and hoping for anything.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what sums it up is the stat. They mentioned it last night. I've mentioned it in the notebook before. Nathan McKinnon has almost 30 shots more than anybody else in the playoffs. That's just incredible. It's 20 some. I think it was 29 or 28
games worth of shots. Nathan McKinnon has more.
Yeah, he just, he's just pumping on. He's just playing at such a high level.
And he's only played in 18 games because they swept twice. They won in 6 against St. Louis, and it's 4 games. And so he's played 18 games, and he's leading by 20 shots. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's right.
That is really nice. Well, let's talk about the controversy at the end. So we do have the final goal, which was one of those bizarre overtime goals where no one knew what happened, but the puck got stuck in the net. It was a really funny thing to watch. Everybody tried to figure out what the heck it was, but then quickly Cooper's complaining right away, and everybody realizes that there were 6 men on the ice for Colorado, and none of the refs saw it. None of the refs picked up on it. None of the refs called it. None of the linesmen called it, which is understandable maybe because it's moving quickly back and forth. Although you'd think they'd be watching that line change pretty closely because everybody was changing because everybody was tired. But the thing is that comes back to the NHL release that this is a non-reviewable call. And I wanted to talk a little bit for a second today about the concept of non-reviewable and what that really means, because to me, we already know. I've already been talking blue in the face about the fact that I can't stand the fact that coaches have to take penalties to try to get the thing right. And that I think there's no reason for that, especially in the playoffs. Overtime goals are all reviewed. I get that, so that makes sense. So overtime goals are reviewed, so that's fine. But as all goals should be, because it's not that hard. But unreviewable, what does that mean? Like, to me, there's 2 things that would define unreviewable. Like, one would be, is the call subjective or not? Like, if a call is subjective, where a guy can say, well, that looked like a trip, or that didn't look like a trip, or that's not, I don't think that should be reviewed, because that's an opinion on the ice. That's like one of those things. That's an opinion right there. And I know that we actually do review some of those now to see if it should have been 5 major or not, but I'm not a big fan of that. So that's the one thing. But the second thing is, if we have a replay of something that is clearly shows something went wrong, which, like, example, like it used to be, the puck hitting netting, or offsides, or this, in this case, 6 players on the ice. How is it non-reviewable if we have a replay of it that it clear and it's not subjective?
Yeah, well, the only thing I would say about that is it is somewhat subjective. And by that, I mean, first of all, that's the way we play all the time during the regular season. But there's another element to this that I want to talk about. But just in regard to, is it 5 feet the rule? I'm not exactly sure exactly. So it's 5 feet. Unless you're standing right there, it's hard to know whether it's 5 feet or 8 feet or 9 feet. Depth perception is always difficult to determine if you're not right there. Now, he should be there because they're moving up and down the sides, but sometimes things happen. So it's not all readily available, and it's become very much like the neighborhood play on the first and second base, where and everybody said that after the game. I mean, this is the way we play all the time. Like that play happens 20 times a game because he's not quite 5 feet. Now, in this case, it was a little bit longer than that. In my opinion, I mean, I thought it was fairly obvious. So,
the bigger thing, Kevin, was that the guy who replaced him, who he was getting off for, was Kadri, who was on the other side of the ice when he received the pass. So,
he got over there. I counted 5 hippopotamus. I pretended I was rushing the quarterback, and I said 1 hippopotamus, 2 hippopotamus, and I got 5. And then we saw, was it McKinnon coming over the board? So anyway, I do believe that there were too many men on the ice, but I think it is fair to say we play like that all the time. That's number one. However, I think the other element that needs to be considered is, and I was told this by a general manager, is this was discussed during the GM meetings in March. And it was decided that, and they were warned that it was going to be called in the playoffs. They were going to be, because it's getting out of hand. I mean, just like the second base situation got out of hand, where if you were just in the same area code, that was good enough. And that's what we've sort of seen happen in hockey, where 5 feet became 10 feet, became 12 feet, and then we end up with a play like that. And so they had been warned, but they still didn't call it. But I thought the fact that we got a release from the NHL afterward, like they knew. And
of course, they knew, because on the official scoring sheet they had 7 players listed on the game-winning goal. So because that's I think that's done automatically with the tracking that they have. That it just registers.
7 players got a plus.
No, I didn't mean that they knew that there had been too many. They knew that they neted to say something.
Right, exactly.
Because it had been, talked about so much on social media.
But I talked to Russ after the game. Russ is on his way back home after he's flying out of Tampa. And I talked to him after the game last night, and I covered the Toronto-Tampa series, and I believe Tampa had 2 or 3 too many men on the ice penalties in that series, and they're legendary. And Russ called it hockey karma, whereas Tampa Bay skirts the rules on too many men on the ice penalties, where they have one guy at one end of the bench going into the play when the other player is coming in at the other end of the bench to get the advantage of the length of the bench, which a lot of teams do. But they push the edge of the envelope, and sometimes they have gotten caught. And I think it happened in the Rangers series too. So, Colorado trying to sort of cheat a little bit. That's just par for the course here. So, yes, there were 6 players on the ice. Should it have been called? Well, if the referees and the linesmen had seen it, yes, but they obviously didn't see it. So they got away with one. And now Tampa Bay is one game away from elimination because of it.
And that's not because of it, because they, I don't like to say that's because of that.
Right.
That's what but because it's one play, and Tampa had plenty of chances to win the game, or they had the lead, and there are all kinds of things they could have, they definitely could have.
Right.
Well, let's just say this: John Cooper, after the game, made it sound like that's he of course he's going to push the buttons of a team that's down 3-1. Of course he's going to lobby post game about watch the video and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And everybody was going to look at it 5 minutes after the game or 5 minutes after the media availability and say, what is he talking about? Because some of the media members didn't know that there was too many men on the ice. They didn't see it. And the confusion of whether the puck actually went in or not, because it was the weirdest game-winning overtime goal since the Patrick Kane goal in 2010.
Right.
So, I think Cooper is basically, he's trying everything he possibly can to push the buttons of a team that, might be on their holding on by their fingernails and being perceived as getting screwed by the league because there was too many men on the ice penalty. That's one button he can push.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, going back to X's original thought about the review, in this case, probably a review would have helped because you could count. But a lot of times it's still going to be very subjective, and it's going to be hard to overrule because it's going to be that close. And but I thought that one was fairly obvious, and I thought the linesman should have seen it. Everybody should have seen it, but they did.
If it was a reviewable play, Kevin, that would make people be a lot more honest. That would be something that would maybe increase the honesty of the and lessen.
Yeah, but we can't. We're running into this. You can't review everything, you really can't. The game is going to be too long, and then if we're going to do that, as someone said, which is where we're heading in baseball, where maybe we should just have people setting up in the press box, just reviewing all the calls as they go and go through it, and that's just it'll be part of it. We could probably have one less referee down on the ice because you just need one. And you just have the guy just push the button. They're all watching it, all the reviews. It sure seems like we're heading that way in baseball.
It's getting really I think tedious in baseball. Kev, with the potential of robot umps going forward with the there's no signs anymore because they're using this non-verbal.
Yeah.
A lot of it some people think it's improvements. I think really it takes away some of the romance of the game.
I'm less bothered by the time in baseball that I thought I was going to be, but they still aren't at the time where they're reviewing a lot of stuff. In hockey, we're going to be reviewing all the time because you're going to have to review every onside, offside, and you're going to have to do, all the goals and all that kind of stuff. So, we're going to see more reviews in hockey just by the nature of the play. That's just what it's going to happen.
Kind of efficiently, Kevin. I don't think we're talking about like we're talking about things. The things I'm talking about here are, okay, I'm not saying every offside is an onside. Although, you could do that in a way where you have, if you put a referee up in the box.
Well, yeah, I think you have to, Eck, if you're going to do it, simply because, then it becomes the question of, well, why didn't you review that? Well, I didn't see it. I didn't think about it. I didn't think it was wrong. So that either has to be all or.
Yeah, the onside offside review thing has another problem to it, in my opinion, and that is another topic we should talk about for a second since we're talking about this. So the concept of the play is continuing. Like there should be a limit, right? Like if the puck was offside, but the puck stays in the zone for a minute and a half, and all this stuff's happening, they can go back. You can go back to a minute and a half before just because the puck never cleared the zone and call the goal bad. That's a problem to me too. There needs to be like a 30-second limit or something along those lines. I firmly believe.
Now, Terry brings up a question that we were talking about.
Other thought for a second, because and then we can definitely.
Yeah, let's take care of this one first before we get
to the helmet thing, because to me, you have the offsides issue, is along those lines, right, where you have that every but usually there's a pretty much like right away if the video. Each team has somebody already, right? Each team has already somebody, as I understand it. One of the assistant coaches is always looking at, was that possibly offsides as it's happening, because so they can review it quickly.
Yeah.
Why can't the league have that? Like one guy saying, was that offsides? And then go and look at it as it's happening. Okay.
Well, they can, but each one of those is still going to take 15 to 20 seconds. Like those, most of them will be pretty quick.
Yeah, most.
But I think you got to do them all. If you're going to do them, you got to do them all. So
I think you only have to do it if a goal occurred. Like it like as the game's going on, you don't have to do it. But
no, yeah, you do. Because
to me, that would slow things down. But to me, it's the idea that you want to get goals right, and that is the issue to me. Like a delayed offsides, it doesn't occur. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect anything. I don't want to go back to the time where we blew it dead without a delayed offsides. Offsides is sped up the game, right? So
I don't think the NHL can go to the extent that the NFL does, where they review every touchdown to make sure that it's a touchdown, because you got more goals scored in individual games than touchdowns in NFL games. It will slow things down to the fact that there'll be 3.5 hour games, and that's not the direction that they want to go. So if you have a review system in place, the only thing I agree with Eck is that, like in a playoff situation, I think they should take away the penalty aspect of a review for goalie interference or offside. Because especially in the playoffs, that can be the difference between like if they get the call wrong, then you really screwed a team for the rest of the game if that other team scores another goal on top of the controversial goal.
Right.
No, but the other element to this is the fact that the rule is flawed. Because and so now, like, suppose that we could have reviewed that. Right. And now, are you going to be willing to say we're waving off that goal because you changed incorrectly, when everybody in the arena knows that we've had prior to that 20 exchanges or more that were illegal?
So
it's going to be subjective.
It's got to be based on a goal, like a goal being scored. Something that, if a goal is scored based on something that happened illegally, but
those line changes, even though a goal wasn't scored, but when they're done, they can prevent goals from being scored as well. Like it could have been.
I'm okay with leaving the referees subjective on that kind of concept, because yes, I agree with you.
Well, I think they got to change the rule. Like I don't know why we don't have a line there, a big red, yellow or whatever line where it's a little bit easier for them to see and say, look, you get out of that line, and the other guy's not back, then it's a penalty. So
take the hexagon. It takes the area behind the net where the goalies can't handle the puck. Move the lines to around the.
Wasn't there a time when there was a line there? I thought for some reason in my memory
there might have been. I don't remember.
I remember that.
I don't think so. But the other element to it too, and that's some people have pointed this out. I mean, even if that goal had been waved off, the way the game was going, I mean, Colorado was still going to get.
Colorado's still going to win, and I agree with that. But that's not always the case, And there are games that are much more even, and that really doesn't much play into it because obviously, for obvious reasons, all the time teams that don't play that aren't the better team in a game win. So that's not something. I mean, Tampa could have easily won that game with just one bounce.
Yeah. Sure.
One bounce and they're 2-2, even though they've been outplayed in almost every period of this series. So the reality, that's what the Rangers were doing before getting outplayed.
I love the arguments that this is like the biggest screw job in Stanley Cup playoff history. It was so much recency bias. It's like, okay, is this worse than Gilmore Gretzky in '93?
It just gets confusing for people, and especially now that we're on ESPN, now that the NHL's on ESPN, and so not just because more people are seeing it, but because everyone watches Sports Center. So now the NHL on Sports Center used to be very, very poorly covered, obviously, when the NHL wasn't there. I mean, they would cover the Stanley Cup Finals, but not in depth. Now everybody's watching Sports Center. Everybody's seeing this, and I'm getting calls today. I don't know if you guys have gotten this. I tend to be the one who always gets these calls from my casual friends out there. Who are like, well, why was that goal allowed to count when it was too many on the ice? It's an interesting thing how it just makes everything really it's a level that it seems so easy to fix it to me. It doesn't seem as
I don't think it's easy.
I don't think it's easy at all.
No, I respect your logic on this, Heck. I think it's sound. But these no replay and replay things are so complicated by the butterfly effect because you never anticipate how that's going to alter the game. And, already, let me give you an example because I thought it was a really good one. In baseball, they're inching toward robotic umpires, but the game has been played, even though it really, the pitch should be called when it crosses the plate.
Right.
Over time, it really now is called based on where it hits the catcher's glove. And I say that because framing is a big part of balls and strikes. And, there are catchers who are really good at it who get that call because they can move that glove without somehow with some magic that doesn't catch the umpire's eye. But some of the good hitters, Freeman pointed this out, that it's going to alter how he has to hit because now the robot is going to call it the way it should be called, which is where it crosses the plate. So that pitch, that slider that's breaking off. Well, apparently before Freeman talked about it, that had not been discussed because they didn't anticipate.
Really?
There was a Blue Jays game a couple days ago where they calculated I guess using QuesTech that the umpire had missed 29 pitches outside the strike zone. When they have robot umpires, that guy's fired because because there's still going to be an umpire there to I guess make other decisions. What the robot will call balls and strikes, but they'll be there for out or safe at home plate or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, it's something that I just don't know whether you can take all the human element out of things.
I don't want to do that. No one's saying to do that. I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying maybe the whole thing is fixed by just a time limit. There's anything that happens within 15 seconds of a goal being scored.
Well, it's ironic.
That to me fixes a lot. That fixes 90% of it.
Well, it's ironic that you bring that up because there were complaints about the Landeskog goal or the goal in Game 1, the original Colorado goal that put them up 1-0. It was 1 minute and 20 seconds from the time the goal went in to the time that Derek Lalonde, the assistant coach, waved him to prevent them dropping the puck to make the appeal to review the goal. 1 minute and 20 seconds. I mean, the normal time is about 40 seconds, and they gave them extra time. Now they got the call right, but
I mean, the important thing is that they knew They got the call. The reason it's allowed to delay that long is they know that something is questionable. Like the refs know that, and we all talk about the refs. They'll make the call, and sometimes they'll leave it up to they'll make what the call they think is, and then they'll leave it up to they know Toronto's going to fix it anyway, right? We've had that argument. People make that argument.
Now, let me just answer Terry's question quickly in the chat regarding the goal, the Cirelli goal.
Well, we can talk about that, but let's just finish that up. It deserves more than just that. I mean, you can tell them, but
well, okay. ABC had Dave Jackson, a former referee, on their broadcast, and the rule basically states that if Kemper's mask got knocked off by the shot, and it was a continuous play, and it was basically bang bang. And when it's a bang bang play, and there's not enough time elapsed to that they will allow the goal to be scored, or the opportunity to go through with the goalie not having the mask on. But if it had gone on for 4 or 5 seconds, they would have blown the play down because it would be deemed unsafe. But now it's still unsafe if it's a bang bang play because he's not wearing a mask. But they think that robs the other team of an opportunity that that it wasn't their responsibility that they took the shot, but the mask came off because the strap broke. So I don't think it was a really controversial call because I mean it was, like I said, it was bang bang. So I don't think.
Yeah, I mean. The players all understand that. That one was not controversial at all to me. I've seen that happen. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen, and they're very consistent about it. If it's in the middle of a play where they're about to score,
right?
And as you said, it's still a dangerous situation. But again, you can imagine what would happen if that was the case. If you knew for sure that if you could get your mask off, I mean, you'd see goalies going like this all the time.
Right.
Trying to get their mask off. It's the same thing when I see people say we got to get rid of that delay of game penalty. Have you forgotten what it was like before that, when people would just shoot the puck out of bounds?
It was considered a good play. Remember that?
It was smart hockey.
I remember Hextall, Ron Hextall, as a goalie, did it all the time. Because he had the ability to shoot the puck that well. Hextall would change the momentum by just doing that. He would just take it and fire it into the board, into the stands.
It's a much better game now because that's a skill. It's an art to play the puck down the ice. Guys have had to now, instead of work at it, instead of just hammering it out. And it requires some skill, to clear the puck out without incurring a penalty. And it's a much better game. And I never feel sorry for anybody when they knock it into the stands. I learn how to do it. And then they say, well, yeah, but it was the pressure and everything. It was just a total accident. Well, yeah, that's right. Because you're under pressure, and the idea is you got to be able to do it under pressure. So I still like that rule. I think it's good, but but I think that sort of speaks to what I'm talking about, how complicated it is in replay, and we've seen it in the NFL. Mike alluded to it about. And the other thing I point out, and with the NFL, because it happens more because you sometimes see games with multiple people, I'm always amused when I'm watching a game with 5 or 6 other people and we see multiple replays and we cannot agree on what the call should be. And we will have those in the NHL as well, particularly on offsides, because we still starting to see it now. And I think I've discussed this before, but I'll bring it up again. I was able to, the NHL allowed me to see photos that they took to show to general managers about all the different views about when a goal has crossed the line. And they allowed me to see each camera angle. And then you see one where you're absolutely positive that it's a goal from all the angles. And then they give me the overhead one. It's not a goal. From five views, it looks thing. But when you see it overhead, there's a clear, it's clear that it's not a goal. And then they showed me one where they were convinced that it was a goal, but it looks from overhead that it isn't. So sometimes it can just be very complicated. So that's all I have to say about it.
And I get that, and I get that. And I don't, I feel for everybody trying to make decisions. I just think my thing is just that if it feels like there's a logical thing that everyone's afraid of, that this will slow the game down so much.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think the other element is that because they know that if you're going to do that, you're going to have to fix the rules. Like we're going to have to fix, when the Major League Baseball went to replay, they had to fix the neighborhood play. They had to make it clear that that wasn't going to be the case anymore. That you can't just get in the general area. You got to actually touch the bag, and we'll have to do that with line changes if we're going to go to that.
Right.
There's going to have to be a hard and fast rule. It's not going to be the neighborhood. You're going to have to call a bunch of too many men on the ice penalties to get everyone, thinking in that regard. And you're going to have to be consistent because, like I said, if they would have say that they, there was one dispensation every game where you could just use replay for whenever you wanted to use it, and they use that, and you called that, people are going to be saying, but that happened 20 times during the game. They really would say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get it. And I do think that, the NHL sometimes is just, I'm amazed that they don't, some of the things we talked about it. I'm sorry, I'm kind of stuttering, but we've talked about how they don't want to fix some things. They don't want to fix the loopholes in certain things. But this feels like an embarrassment to me. And I know that it is what it is, but it feels like when you can get it right. And I don't understand the whole, we go through this whole thing, non-reviewable. Like it was non-reviewable for a while to hit the mesh, but then we had a goal to hit the mesh and they made that reviewable, right? It was non-reviewable for high sticks. And then we had a high stick and goal, and non-reviewable for offsides. We had an offsides goal. Will this now it was non-reviewable for too many men on the ice? And will this change that?
At a certain point, they have to stop back because they also want to make sure that games are prompt. Because of in having TNT broadcasts and ESPN broadcasts, and last night ABC, that game was over, and 30 seconds after it was over, they were going to the local news. They want these games over as quickly as possible.
Sure.
So they don't want them dilly-dallying around with controversy. So I think they'll accept the blowback they want to get things right, but they also want the games to be shorter.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, that's definitely true. There's no question about that.
I have a hard time with all that because I'm not one of those people who care about the length of games. So I've always struggled on that. When you're at a game and you're there in person, you're not rooting for it to get over quicker. That's the way I view it. I think it's all based on television, from their programming standpoint. And sometimes you want to go to bed when you're at home. But if you're there, you're not thinking, well, I mean, maybe if you have your kids there and you're trying to, not have them out late. But I'm not sure that the length of a game is a big a factor for fans as it's always made out to be.
It's definitely not. I mean, it is an issue, obviously, with NHL overtimes on major networks are a nightmare. I've talked about that.
Sure.
You could go 5 overtimes, and although you would think that would be like, wow, that's incredible, and it is a great thing for the sport when it happens. That's something that they dread, that kind of thing, and also then the lack of advertising in overtime too. That's another thing that we have to remember.
All right.
There's no ad breaks.
But it kind of fits here, so I'll tell this story again because I really think it's fascinating. With regard to what Mike was talking about, the fatigue factor. Well, one of his allies on that would be the great Igor Larionov, who is one of the greatest players in Russian history and certainly was a top NHL player.
Yeah.
He really believed that the NHL concept of multiple overtimes was just a terrible way to decide a hockey because he said, as he put it, the fatigue becomes the prevailing factor, not the talent. Is who's tired, who's not feeling well, who's been pressured too much. And he goes, I don't like hockey games decided by who's more tired. He said, but he believed they should go to a shootout after one period because he was also a soccer fan. And as he said, soccer is a much bigger game. That's the tradition there. It works really well. People don't complain about it. They just do it. Now, obviously, you and I think that's absurd, but he felt strongly that the tradition of lengthy overtimes is not a way to decide who should be the champion.
I had this debate one time in Europe when my daughter was playing for a U.S. soccer team in Europe at the end of high school. She played for a select team and went over there, and I was with some of the other fathers, stuff like that. And we get in these debates about some of the rules. Like I hated the concept of people against soccer, people faking injuries and all this stuff, and just stuff that just doesn't the reasons I think soccer doesn't fly in the U.S. sometimes, And I said, yeah, and we talked about the shootout as determining these games, and I said, yeah, the NHL does that too now. But they do something that I think soccer would be really smart in doing. And my concept was always that soccer should go to a 10-minute 7v7. And if they did that, versus, as the NHL does 3-on-3, imagine how exciting that would be, Kevin. I mean, that would be like an incredible pro player.
Yeah, you don't tug on Superman's cape or pull the mask off.
Wouldn't that be better?
You don't tell Europeans how to play soccer.
I know, but wouldn't that be better? I mean, that just
you play 6v6 in indoor soccer, and I don't find that more entertaining. I've played it.
But with a that's a small field. I mean, you're talking 7v7, a full size soccer field. You're gonna have chances. People are gonna be able to get through that, and you're gonna have all kinds of scoring chances, and you have a chance to determine it for real.
It's bastardizing the game, really. It is. I mean, but
it's already bastardized by the shootout. Like the shootout is not the shootout's not the game at all. But
they've been doing that for a long time, right. So it's part of their tradition,
Yeah, and I get the tradition and everything, but it's like it is the dumbest way to determine a winner because having
it seems dumb to us because we know hockey. That's the problem. But not to them. They think what we do is dumb. So
yeah, I get that, but I was the father of a soccer goalie. Like she was a soccer goalie, and knowing what the shootout is the ridiculous amount of
But you just don't tell Europeans how to play soccer. You don't tell people from Pakistan how to play cricket.
Yeah.
They're just things you just don't do.
I know. I am pretty fun. It is pretty amazing to me, and I'm really thankful to Gary Bettman. And I think one of Bettman's biggest legacies has been the fact that he has said, frankly, flat out, he would never change the playoff overtime ever.
Yeah,
he would never do it, and that's saying something because that there's pressure on him to change that. There's no question about that.
Well, I hope there's more pressure about expanding the playoffs to 20 teams rather than changing the overtime, because I think that's the bigger problem right now. And, I think that's additional revenue that the league could derive. So, I mean, I'd be wasting my breath talking to Gary Bettman about that because he's never going to change his mind on that, apparently. Unless
the thing about it is I've known Gary a long time. And usually he has a reason for it. And I've never been able to discern what that reason is, why he's not. Because usually, if you're advancing the game, you're making more revenue, he's all for it. So, but he thinks that, all he's ever said is that this concept works. He thinks they have the right number of teams. And, he likes the 16 4-round thing. He doesn't want that fifth, sub round, so. Yeah. I'm not really sure because I've been in favor of it. To be honest with you, it was all based on baseball. That game is so exciting, and you could charge anything to go see that, and people would go. And I never have bought the argument that it makes the regular season insignificant because you should avoid at all costs.
Yeah, I think it makes it more significant because more teams will be fighting for more spots. So, there's a couple news and notes here. I know if you want to do rumor chart stuff.
I have the rumor chart ready to go too. So,
okay, just a couple things. Well, one guy you'll have to take off the rumor chart. Apparently, there are reports that the Vegas Golden Knights and Riley Smith have reached a verbal agreement on a multi-year contract extension. You could see this coming probably a couple days ago when the Shea Weber deal went down, because that cleared $5 million of Dadanoff's contract and also gives Vegas the ability to go into LTIR with Weber, who's not going to play ever again. So, obviously, I think that they saw the value of Riley Smith. and they wanted to bring him back. So now it looks like they're going to. But I don't know whether this eliminates the potential of them maybe buying out a guy like Pacioretty, because he's got a year left, and if they want to do anything else, they may need more cap space. But he had a decent year and a half a year. But
I mean, they had to sign Riley Smith, especially after losing Davidoff. It's like they really have they really do need their secondary scoring, and Riley Smith is one.
I think Riley. They see Riley as a primary scorer.
And he is one of the real strong links to their brief history, but he's been there the whole time, and he's been and they've gotten rid of a lot of guys who were there from the beginning.
Right.
There's only a couple guys that have been there the whole time, which is astonishing because they've only been around for such a short period of time. But he's one of them for sure. And
well, it's interesting, and I made note of this in my notebook, but today is the 6th anniversary of their origin. And when they first got in the league, they were the darlings of the league. And in 6 years, I think they've managed really to tick off everybody in the league.
They really have.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really amazing how, everybody just thought, this is so cool and everything else. And now, whatever they do, we all,
I think the players still want to go there, though.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think they have, because at some point, with some of the stuff they've done.
Yeah.
That could take some of the players off, too. Like,
yes, the players still want to go there, but I think not as much as they did a few years ago, because some of the stuff they pulled with players like Nate Schmidt, where they signed him and then a year later, they traded him, and they've cleared out. I think the only guys left from that original team are Marchessault, Riley Smith, Carlson, and Shea Theodore. I think those are the only ones.
Yeah, and they were 4 of the big ones, of course, from that original team, and they've added some really great players. Don't get me wrong. They really have. They've done, they definitely have added some. I mean, Pietrangelo is a hell of a player to add. So they've done that. But they have, that magic of being an expansion team. It's amazing how quickly they just became another team. Like they just became a team.
It's funny because now there are 2 groups of fans who hate the Vegas Golden Knights. Every organization who has struggled to get to a Stanley Cup over years and years hated that 2018 team because they came in the league and got to the Cup final immediately. Now all the teams out there that tried to build their own teams through the draft and take a conservative approach, they hate them because they're going out and signing free agents willy-nilly, and they're doing so you've pissed off 2 spectrums of NHL fandom and NHL management, probably the way they've operated, but they don't care. They just want to win.
I think the dislike of them is I think it's different than you think it is. I think it's more, not so much about, that they got in quick or to the final, or that they, how they're building the team. I think it's just how they've gone about it. It's, some of the general managers that complain that, they don't seem sincere in their offers, and, there's been pulling of offers, and, the fact that they're, it seems like they're playing fast and loose. I mean, that's why people don't like Tampa Bay with the loopholes of the salary cap. It's just how they conduct themselves seems to me to be the reason why everybody just don't see them as the darlings anymore. So
and I think that is definitely the feeling among the league, and the other owners don't like them at all. I've heard other owners talk about them. They really just don't like the way it's handled. I mean, they are going for it as a fan, from a fan's perspective. I think they're a fun team because if you are the fan of that team, that is going to go for it all the time. And this year it bit them, no question about it. This year they flew too close to the sun. I mean, they really did. We often talk about, if they make that trade, they're going to be screwed, or they make this, they're going to be screwed. They're going to be screwed. They were screwed. They screwed themselves this year, but in the long term, they might have sacrificed a year for what could be a pretty good situation if they get this together again. Because if Eichel becomes Eichel and really, and then they can actually get to the point where Eichel and Stone are both in the lineup, then they are a force. They're a force, But
they will. I mean, Mike just talked about it. Like if Pacioretty can stay healthy, and that's been kind of iffy for him, but that suddenly they're a formidable group. They've got a lot of firepower, and Eichel makes them stronger down the middle, and they've got a defense, and I don't love their goaltending. I like Logan Thompson.
I do too.
I'm not a big fan. I appreciate Robin Leonard's position on political issues, but I didn't think he was very good last year. So
yeah.
The other bit before we go to the rumor chart was the announcement. Elliot Friedman reported that Pierre-Luc Dubois has told the Winnipeg Jets that he plans to test the free agent waters. Now he's got 2 years before he's unrestricted. So it's not an immediate thing. It's not like it's this July, it's 2024, but Winnipeg clearly wants to get him locked up on a long-term deal because that's, Winnipeg realizes they're Winnipeg and they can't risk, like players walking away from nothing like Jacob Trouba could have been if he got to unrestricted free agency when he did get to unrestricted free agency. So, that might mean that they will trade Dubois at some point, either this summer or during the next season, while he still has the ability to be retained by the team that he gets traded to. And that they traded Line for him, Kev. So that's they clearly wanted to keep him long term, and if he doesn't want to stay there, then.
We talked about this possibility that he could do to them what Laine had done to them and what he was doing to Columbus, which is just saying, I don't want to be here and I'm going to leave. And they're doing that. And now it's just a matter of deciding whether they want to trade him this summer or next summer. If you trade him this summer, you can argue you can get full price for him because, they'll have at least 2 years with him. And if you're a contender and maybe a new team could talk him into staying. If you trade him next summer, well, then you only got 1 year. So, but at least that team can trade him again at the deadline if they didn't, So it's, I think they'll get, he had scored goals this year. So I think they'll get, pretty good value for him.
I think so too. All right, so we have just a few seconds left here. So we're going to go to this, the rumor chart for a little bit and do a couple teams here while we're at this, and a couple players, and so these are some guys we'll talk about today. Malkin, Forsberg, Leddy, and Marchment. Kind of an interesting hodgepodge of all different players at different stages of their careers and meaning different things to their team, right? So, I have heard, with Malkin, I put the Capitals on there because I have heard a lot of that in the last couple of days, and it is surprising because I was always under the impression, that Malkin and Ovechkin didn't get along at all. That was the impression that I think has been out there for a long time. But
the Backstrom injury and him probably going on LTIR and probably potentially being done. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but I think that's a big factor. I mean, you've got Kuznetsov there, you've got Ovechkin, you've got Orlov. There's Samsonov. There's a lot of Russians there.
Yeah,
and that might be a good fit. And what better way for Malkin to sort of get back at Pittsburgh if it's to go to Washington?
It is interesting. Fleury wouldn't go to Washington at all, and he wasn't even on the team anymore, on the Penguins anymore. And yet, if Malkin's willing to go, what are your thoughts on Malkin and possibly Washington, Kev?
I've heard that is a possibility, and I don't think the relationship between Ovechkin and Malkin is as bad as people think it is.
Okay,
they've played on national teams together. I remember one year at an All-Star game, they worked a prank together. Not a prank, but a comedy skit together. I think that there are some issues because he's a Penguin and Capital, and Ovechkin's Capital. But I think Ovechkin would go to Leonsis and said, get me Malkin. So.
Yeah. And I mean, it would be it would be a great story for all of us. It'll be.
Oh yeah. For sure.
It would be a hell of a thing to see him put on that jersey and then to play against the Penguins. I mean, you're talking about all kinds of ratings and everything like that. So,
and just to play with Ovechkin, these are two of the greatest Russian players in the history of the sport.
Oh, yeah. And for Malcolm, for the first time, to be the number one center on the team, he would actually go there and be the guy, which is would, is something that like I've said before, from reading David King's book on the Russian on Russian players a long time ago, that he said that's a huge thing to Russian players, that they're on the first line, that they're the first line player. And Malkin seems to be okay with not being that for a long time in Pittsburgh. But now Philip Forsberg, heard a little bit of Detroit, Kevin, which will kill Predators fans because that's like their arch rival, of course.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I would be shocked if they didn't make a real strong effort to try to get him. Yeah. I'm not sure, he would want to go there because, I'm sure he wants to win, and they're far away. I would see more as LA. And maybe I don't know how he sees the Devils, but that's still the New York metropolitan area, and if he feels they're a team that isn't that far off, that would be a possibility. I don't see any chance of him going to the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, no. I mean, they have to spend money on something. We know that they have to get to the cap floor because the cap floor is $61 million. But I don't know. Other than players going there for 1 year, and saying, okay, I'll take the paycheck. I don't know anybody in their right mind who's going to Ottawa right now.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, and I don't. I just feel differently about that. I know. I feel like this is a team that has a lot of talent, and they are on the right. They are heading in the right way. I know they've had issues on the upper management, and obviously, their owner passed away. I mean, there's things that are happening there, but I still think they've got some talent. I think that they're a tough team to play against. And they feel like they've got some young talent as well.
They do. But until that young talent starts to come more to the forefront, until the ownership situation gets rectified, until there was news coming out yesterday that there was some sort of memorandum of understanding about LeBreton and a new building in downtown Ottawa. If that comes to fruition, then you're right. But right now, you've got a rudderless ship with a general manager who doesn't know whether he's got any kind of job security because he doesn't know who the owner is going to be. And I think they're going to probably take a 1 year approach and, get to the cap floor and add more young talent and then go from there. But I just can't see anybody, I can't see Claude Giroux signing a 4-year deal to go to Ottawa right now because you don't know if the team's going to be in Ottawa in 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mike for this reason. When you're a UFA, this is your chance to do it the way you want to do it. Yeah. And you want an extreme comfortable situation. Yeah. And there are factors about Ottawa that are uncomfortable for players. There's a bit of an unknown there. And just because we don't know what's going to happen with the ownership of the team, we don't know how long it's going to take for them to rise up. I mean, I like a lot of their young players. And I just don't see anybody being in a Forsberg position saying, well, I'll take a chance on Ottawa. You don't take chances when you're a UFA.
Yeah. I also think that, I don't know, maybe you watch him closer than anybody else, Kevin, but looking at, the young talent that Detroit has, and then the guys coming in this year, they're going to be, I think that there's a chance that Detroit's further along than you're giving them credit for being.
Well, we're going on what Steve Eisenman says.
Yeah, right. But what he feels, could that be different in this situation too? He's going to play it down as much as possible, right? But
well, that's not usually what he does. He's a pretty honest guy about things, but he doesn't believe they're very close. He was very disappointed with the effort. We'll just call it effort, but it's not really that. I think they weren't trying, but down the stretch. And, there are a lot of folks that think that it's Lucas Raymond and Seider and maybe Larkin, and then the rest will be gone. And that's going to take another, 3 years in order to do that. I mean, he has said openly that, the team is not nearly as close as he hoped it would be. So,
yeah. I mean, I know that they have a lot of young players who they question, but there's also, it's just an interesting team. I think if you're Forsberg and you think about going to that team, you realize, building blocks are there. We're actually,
but I could see that I've been going and saying, look, you can play with Larkin,
right?
We've got some, Verana. We've got, there's some elements there for sure.
Yeah, and when you have a defense as solid as they're going to be in the next couple of years, that's something too. I mean, that's
and you've got stability of ownership.
Yeah.
You've got the long tradition of the Red Wings. It's a beautiful,
great market. Yeah, it's a great market to play in. I mean, everybody, the jersey, to pull that jersey over your head, everybody's proud of that.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of things there that definitely do matter. But that's all the time we have really for today. But check out the rumor chart, guys. There's plenty of stuff on there as well. I updated like 17 or 18 players today. Already did take Riley Smith off the chart. After this morning, bumping him up pretty high to Vegas. And I was hearing some of the same kind of things, but he is off now officially. So, but then we'll be back again on tomorrow, Friday. Tomorrow's Friday. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you then.